Hi, and welcome to a Yin Yoga podcast. I'm your host, Nick Danu. I am a Yin Yoga teacher trainer, a certified yoga therapist, and a yoga business mentor. If you are new around here, welcome to a Yin Yoga podcast. And for those of you that are familiars, welcome back. If you have been here before and you have been benefiting from these episodes, if you've been getting some ahas or tips or tricks for your teaching or clarity, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to pause this episode right now and go into either Apple or Spotify, wherever you're listening, and give the podcast a 5-star review. That would be awesome. On Apple, you can do 5 stars and or a written review. You want to do both? Awesome. On Spotify, you can just do stars. So if you want to just go bloop, 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 give me some stars, I would be so grateful. This tells the algorithms that people are actually getting benefit from the podcast so that it's more likely to show up when people are searching. This podcast is, at the time of this recording, not even a year old yet. So it is a little baby still. It's just getting its feet. So if you don't mind taking a moment to do that, that will give it a little boost in the algorithm. And I will be so grateful. So that's one thing to mention. The other thing I want to mention, there's a couple more things before we get started in today's episode, is, dear teacher, if you are listening to this and you have considered taking my training, whether that's because you have no Yin training and you want a really good, solid foundation, or you have a Yin training, but are now realizing maybe there was some holes in your training. Because here's the thing, dear yoga teacher, we could take hundreds and hundreds of hours of Yin training and still always learn more. So if my training has been sounding intriguing to you, I would love to have you join the waitlist. And here's why you might want to just join the waitlist rather than waiting for me to post it on social. Reason number one, the waitlist gets first crack at registration. So before I open it up to the public, they get the first link to sign up. Number two, the first 5 people that sign up get a 25% off discount code. And that is only available to the folks on my waitlist. So that discount code only for people on the waitlist. Number 3, you're going to get some goodies and gifts from me along the way. You will get these podcast episodes. You will get some practice videos. You will get some little videos that are sneaky peek behind the scenes of previous years of trainings that I've done, just little clips so that you get a peek behind the curtain. And a bunch of other stuff that I happen to come up with along the way, whether it's sequences or music, or I'll be emailing you on a regular basis with some great things to help you in your teaching while registration is not open yet. And then when registration is open, you will be the first to know. So how you get on the wait list is you click, there's a link in the episode notes here that says yoga teachers get on the wait list. Click that link, look way up in my photograph. You'll see there's some words and a button. You can click that button, enter your name and email. Or if you are wanting to read and peruse all about the training, go ahead and read that page. And then lo and behold, right at the bottom, bing, bang, boom, there's another opportunity for you to click a button and enter your name and email. And if you're there long enough, there will even be a slide from the side, polite pop-up that will pop up that will add you to the wait list. Right away, when you join the waitlist, you will already get a free PDF sequence of a full body Yin practice. And then a few days later, you get a video to practice with as well. So that's why you might want to join the waitlist. If you have been pondering my training and humming and hawing about it, then please take that opportunity to make sure that you get advanced registration notice, a discount code, and then a whole bunch of other Yin goodies along the way. Before we dive into today's episode, which I'm excited about, I wanted to read a review from somebody who was in my training previously. And this is by Brigitte. I attended a Yin yoga training in the past, and honestly, I did not like it. So I never considered myself to be a Yin yoga girl. Now, after this training, my view of Yin yoga has changed completely. After day 1, I knew I was in the right place to learn Yin yoga. Your way of teaching is fabulous. So for me, it was a mixture of the expertise and the teaching style that brought my understanding of Yin yoga to a completely different level. It makes me want to know even more. I loved the background information you shared with us because I'm a total geek and always want to know more. I loved your way of teaching, which was very down to earth and natural. A mixture between humor and warm-heartedness and expertise resonated well with me. I know that I can be a traditional hatha yoga and still teach yin yoga without now losing the authenticity. Seeing both as an individual systems that are equally needed and based on wisdom. I absolutely do recommend this training to other teachers. You offer a lot in this training, and the information shared is just very valuable. I've done too many online trainings, but this one has definitely been one of my favorites. Honestly, I wish for more of everything, 100 hours or even more. 60 hours was a wonderful start. So yeah, I'd totally do 100 hours with you. Thank you, Brigitte. All right, my friends, today, without further ado, we shall get into the topic. Now, those of you that are watching this on YouTube, and if, dear listener, if you did not know, you can watch these on YouTube, you can. So if you are more of a visual person than an audio person, you can watch them on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, take a moment to make sure you've subscribed and like the video. I would be super grateful. And then at the end, let me know if there was any ahas or cool nuggets of information that stood out to you in the comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see me navigating around a little bit with my eyes and my screen because I have some notes and they're on several different sources. So if you see my eyes shifting around, I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So if you're listening to this live when it comes out, it will be the first day of summer. And so I thought it would be a great idea to do a little bit of just a brief synopsis of summer according to Taoism and TCM, like an overview for you. I did a brief one also in the winter. So I think that this is a great idea to have a bit of a seasonal theme. Now, that's of course, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. If you do not live in the Northern Hemisphere, then you will be approaching your winter. Okay. So let's get into a little bit of info about summertime. So summer in traditional Chinese medicine and Taoism is connected to the element of fire, which makes sense logically. Here's a quote by Lao Tzu. The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. I think this is such a great reminder because what can happen in the summer, especially for those of you that are summer lovers and you know who you are, is that we just get so excited and we want to do all the things and we're just like, go, 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 go. And we do all of this sort of yang activity, being outside, socializing, etc. You know, we have more daylight and we can forget to harmonize that with a little bit of yin energy. So this is a good reminder. The flame that burns twice as bright only burns half as long. Okay, so within the fire element, again, we're connected to summer. The direction is south. The color is red. The climate is heat, which is pretty logical. The yin channels that are associated with the fire element are the heart and the pericardium, and the yang channels are the small intestine and the Jiao. Summer is a little interesting in TCM because the fire element has more meridians connected to it. And some people split these apart and call some of them ministerial fire and fire. I'm not going to get that detailed about it, but it is unique that there are 2 yin channels and 2 yang channels that are connected to the fire element, which is the element for summertime. The sound is laughter. The qi raises up and the emotion is joy. The spirit is Shen. And the constitutional archetype, if you could come up with one, would be the life of the party. So the heart in Chinese medicine is super important. It is said to be the sovereign, that all of the other organs are in service to the heart. And so the heart is really, really important when we're talking about this time of year and the fire element. There are also tastes and things like that as well that go along with the fire element. So the taste, for example, is bitter. So the heart is the sovereign. All of the other organs are in service to the heart, which is one of the things when I first heard this in TCM foundations that helped me to just fall madly in love with this way of viewing the world and our bodies, this sort of Taoist TCM lens. So the heart is the sovereign and the leader of all the other organs, and all of the organs are in service to the heart. The physiological functions of the heart, according to TCM, include circulating blood in our body, but the heart is also responsible for our spiritual and our mental activities. In TCM, the heart is the abode of the Shen. And Shen is sometimes translated as mind, but it's important to note that the view of mind in Taoist thought is not the way that we think of the mind in Western thought. In Western thought, we think of the mind as our brain and our thoughts. But in TCM, the Shen is equivalent of the mental function, but also has a role in emotion. So although in the West, we separate body, mind, and spirit, in TCM, the mind and heart are one, and that oneness is called Shen. The Shen is what allows our inner radiance to shine outward. It's the alertness of our mind and the inner vitality that can shine out through our eyes. This brightness is called our Shen Ming, and the Shen Ming is the glow, spark, or radiance of fire that shows up as enthusiasm or sparkle in the eyes. The heart stores the Shen, and the Shen affects our ability to fall asleep. The Shen goes outward in the day and engages with the world, and then at night, the Shen returns to the heart and rests in the blood of the heart. I just love that little visual. The Shen affects our short-term memory, governs our ability to think clearly. If our Shen is weak, then we can't think clearly. We might be forgetful or our concentration wanders off. And if our Shen isn't settled, we can have difficulty falling asleep, dream disturbed sleep, or we might experience anxiety. So I mentioned that there are 2 yin and 2 yang meridians connected to the element of fire, which is the element connected to summer. So we have the heart and we have the small intestine. So the heart is the yin, the small intestine is the yang. Do you have the patience to wait until mud settles and the water is clear? Again, by Lao Tzu. So the small intestine is the paired organ to the heart, and the role of the small intestine is to separate the pure from the impure. And while this makes sense on a purely physiological level, right? Purification, transporting clear substances, and expelling what in TCM they often call the turbid, there's also a mental, emotional aspect to this function as well. So the small intestine is also responsible for separating the clear from the turbid thoughts. And when the small intestine is in harmony, it knows the difference between right and wrong, wise and unskillful judgment, and healthy and unhealthy decisions. The small intestine, if the small intestine is in a state of disharmony, there may either be a life of no purity or somebody who's obsessed with living a pure life. And then the pericardium, which is absolutely one of my favorite concepts. So the pericardium is a real thing anatomically in our body, but of course in TCM and in Taoism, they have all this poetry and symbolism that goes along with it. He who defends with love will be secure. Heaven will save and protect him with love. Lao Tzu. So the pericardium has an anatomical role and a mental emotional role as well, in this case as the heart protector. So according to teachanatomy.info, the physical pericardium is made up of 2 layers, a rough external layer of fibrous pericardium and a thinner, more internal layer known as the serous pericardium. So there's 2 layers to this sort of bag or sac of the pericardium that protects the heart. So the pericardium is both literally and symbolically the heart protector. In TCM, sometimes they talk about the pericardium being a wall or a fence around the heart. So the pericardium not only physically protects the heart, but also energetically shields the heart from damage and disruption of excessive emotions from the other organs and from external sources. In TCM, the view of health and extreme emotional states of any kind are seen to be disruptive, right? So in TCM, they don't differentiate that there are certain emotions that are 100% negative and some that are positive. All emotions brought out to the extreme can cause disharmony and disease. So without the pericardium, the heart could be gravely injured just through everyday emotional fluctuations. So here are some possible signs of weakness in the pericardium. And by this, I'm speaking metaphorically, not physically. Being emotionally guarded or having an inability to be vulnerable, a fear of intimacy, sort of an irrational relationship fear. too much joy, incessant laughter, giggling out of control, anxiety, or mental disturbance. And then on the other side, if there's a disharmony in the pericardium, there could be excessive vulnerability. So those people that wear their heart on their sleeve, or inappropriate intimacy, those people that tell you way too much, way too personal, way too soon, or depression. And it can also manifest as profound sadness or melancholy. One of my other favorite quotes that always makes me think of the pericardium, and this was not her intention, and she has since softened the quote, but the first time that I heard it, it was by Danielle Laporte, who's one of my favorite Canadian speakers and authors. And she said, "Wide open heart, big fucking fence." So that's one of my favorites to think of the pericardium. Okay, couple more meridian nuggets here for you. So the Jiao, which is sometimes called the triple burner or the triple heater. All streams flow to the sea because it is lower than they are. Humility gives it its power. If you want to govern the people, you must place yourself below them. If you want to lead the people, you must learn how to follow them. So the official of balance and harmony, sometimes again, as I mentioned, the Jiao is also called the triple heater, triple burner, depending on what school you studied in. And the Jiao is the conductor for our original qi and is responsible for spreading it throughout the body. So we should note that the Jiao doesn't really have a Western anatomical structure. Although some people compare it to the lymph system, it's often a little bit hard to grasp its function. But the Jiao refers to three origins: heaven, earth, and water. And there are three Jiaos. So the upper Jiao receives the ethereal influences that are likened to heaven. The middle Jiao is associated with the earth element, and the lower Jiao is associated with the drainage of water. So one way we could think of the Jiao is as the very essential spaces in the body, or placeholders, or cavities, or Jiaos for the organs within the body's trunk, and then their relationships to fluids. So the three Jiao are the upper Jiao, which holds the heart and lungs, which is a mister. The middle Jiao holds the spleen and the stomach, which is for marinating. And then the lower Jiao holds the kidney and bladder for draining. So those are the meridians that are connected to the fire element: the heart, the small intestine, pericardium, and the Jiao. So here are some other little things that can come up with a fire personality archetype. Now, I will say that 5-element acupuncture is a bit controversial. Some people are all for it and some people aren't. But to me, a lot of it makes sense. So within each of us, we of course have all of the elements, but that we may have an element that is dominant or an element that is most likely to be put in disharmony when we're not in a state of health. And so we could call these personality archetypes. And the personality archetype for the fire personality would be the extrovert. So typically people with a fire constitution are the life of the party. They tend to be outgoing and social and talkative and giggly. Fire people are energetic and they have the power of charisma. They have creative potential and desire, and they are passionate people. They love sensation, drama, and sentiment. Fire types aren't overly concerned about material wealth. They tend to have little confidence and plenty of worries. They dislike being alone. By themselves, they feel lifeless. In others' company, they come alive. A fire person craves a connection with others, as well as acceptance, warmth, and intimacy. So this is why I say definitely the extrovert. When they are not up, they're down. When they're not filled with excitement, they feel empty and hopeless. Because of this, fire types can be prone to anxiety, insomnia, and depression. So in summer, of course, which is connected to fire, which is why I went all over all that fire stuff. It is the most yang of the seasons, and it represents our outward energy, our expansion, our movement, our activity. So this is the time that we use the energy that we've been storing up all winter, which hopefully you've been doing because you've been resting. Bitter is the taste associated with the heart, which might sound strange to us to think of like having a bitter heart, but bitter flavors drain and clear excess heat and fire out of the body. So in TCM, food has a temperature. Cooling foods are important this time of year for summer due to the summer heat. They will help to nourish yin and generate body fluids and release toxins, and to keep the body cool by clearing heat. So this is the perfect and the only time that some Chinese medicine doctors, for some people, because if you've got too much damp, you're still not going to do this, would recommend raw and cold foods in the diet. So typically in Chinese medicine, not a big fan of raw. They're not a big fan of the smoothies. Not at all. If that's too cooling to the digestion. But for some people, if your fire element is strong, you might choose some cooler foods through the summer, and to make sure that you stay hydrated. So you can add fresh mint and cucumber and lemon to your water, both of which are cooling and detoxifying. Those folks that summer is the time of the year that you've been waiting for. If you are a summer lover, you just like live all year for summer, there is this more kind of carefree, laid back vibe that we can benefit from after the long, cold winters, and this element of play and being extroverted. But we do have to make sure that we do try to stay cool and that we do take time still to rest. We don't want our fire to burn out by the end of summer. And I see this all the time with students, especially the summer lovers, that by the time they get to fall, they're just like sort of spun into a tizzy. They have no sort of sense of ground or earth element left in them, and that they're running too hot, so to speak. So summer foods that you could incorporate, and again, I just as a disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. These are meant as general fun pop culture information, not as recommendations for you personally, because dear listener, I don't know you. But summer foods you could incorporate with cold properties that can clear heat and reduce toxins and generate fluids: watermelon, apricot, cantaloupe, lemon, peach, orange, strawberries, tomatoes, asparagus, sprouts, bamboo, bok choy, broccoli, Chinese cabbage, cucumber, white mushrooms, snow peas, spinach, summer squash, watercress, seaweed, mung beans, cilantro, mint, dill, and seafood or fish if you do so indulge. So here are some tips that we want to keep in mind for the summertime. Make sure you stay hydrated. This is a hard one for me because I don't love water, so I have to keep tricking myself by putting some of those yummy above mentioned things in water to keep me drinking lots of water. So make sure you're staying hydrated because you're losing more fluids. And it's the perfect time to incorporate some raw cold foods into the diet if appropriate for you. There are people in TCM that have been diagnosed in TCM with too much damp who probably still don't want to be doing all the raw and the cold, even in the heat of summer. But fresh fruits, veggies, salads are okay for most people right now. Eat in moderation. In summer, indigestion can easily occur. So we don't want to be eating anything that's like dense or greasy or heavy. We want to keep things light. Overconsumption of any food, especially cooling foods in TCM, can lead to indigestion, sluggishness, and even possibly diarrhea. So we want to stay away from dairy, heavy, greasy foods, or any dark meats, which tend to be warmer in nature. So that's just a little bit of an overview of summer. Now, as a yoga teacher, you're probably thinking, well, this was all fun pop culture information, but how would I bring this into my teaching? Well, this is one of the things that I do in my teacher training. At the end of my training, everybody does 5 sequences for their homework. And the sequences are based one on each of the elements. And this is the way that I tend to incorporate this kind of TCM and Taoist thought into my teaching. I don't overdo it because, of course, although I studied Chinese medicine, I did not complete that program. And so I can't be teaching a group class and giving them all of that information because it's very individual. So what might be appropriate for one, as I mentioned in the disclaimer a moment ago, that I don't know you, I haven't done an intake with you, and I'm not a Chinese medicine practitioner. So although I mentioned those foods, those might not be suitable for you, right? Because we are all individuals. So I don't try to get too specific when I teach seasonal things in my yin classes, but here is how I use the seasons currently in my teaching. Typically speaking, if I haven't already done one, I will do a mini workshop or a slightly longer class, somewhere around an hour and 45 minutes or maybe 2 hours, depending, that I will offer to my students. And it is usually a little bit of the theory that we just went through, and then a sequence that is themed according to the sinew channels that correspond with the meridians for that time of year. So some of you might have been like, so, say what? Sinew what? So in Chinese medicine, we have these meridians, and most commonly we pay most attention to the 12 main meridians that are connected to our organs and the Jiao. And what happens, I find, in yin circles is that people get a little bit of this information and then they kind of go all crazy with it. So I'm not teaching my classes based on exclusively the meridians, but what I am doing is I'm incorporating poses that are connected to the sinew channels for those meridians. And bear with me, I'm going to explain this. So if you're like, what the hell is a sinew channel? So in my opinion, and I've heard this from several other yin teachers who are acupuncturists, so I'm going to go with it, to say that I'm doing this pose for the blank meridian isn't actually very accurate, because actually what we're accessing is the sinew channel connected to that meridian. Sinew is another word for fascia. So each of the meridians has this energetic pathway with the little points on it. This is what we use in Chinese medicine and acupuncture and in shiatsu and also in medical qigong. They use those sort of points as a way to help to treat when there's disharmonies or disease. But that meridian pathway in its sort of large scope, and trying to use that in yoga isn't very accurate, because unless you're doing point by point pressure or needling, you're not really accessing the meridian in the way that you think you are. I did do an interview with Dr. Karina Smith where we talked about this in more in depth, and so you can definitely check that out. But what happens in yin groups is that, teachers read a few books on Chinese medicine, and then all of a sudden they start including traditional Chinese medicine stuff in their teacher training when they've never studied it in depth, nor have they consulted with a Chinese medicine doctor to make sure that what they're saying is even remotely accurate. This is unfortunate, but it is the wild, wild west in the yogaverse, and this is what happens. So saying I'm doing this pose for the blank meridian is not really accurate. First of all, there's no way to do a pose and only access one meridian. That's like not a thing. It's not possible. Second of all, what we're actually accessing in yin yoga is the sinew channels, which is the corresponding fascia channel that goes with the meridian. Some of the sinew channels, and I'll probably do a whole episode on this later, but just in brief, some of the sinew channels are directly the same exact pathway as the meridian, and some don't. So for example, the liver channel, the sinew channel actually ends long before the full meridian channel. And it's the sinew channel that we're working with in our yin classes. It's the corresponding fascia channel. So we have our meridian, we have our corresponding sinew channel or fascia channel, and that is where we excel as yin yogis, is accessing those sinew channels. So how I teach seasonally is I will usually offer a workshop at the beginning of the season on that season. If I've already done one on that season, then I will share it with my email list. So I'll share the recording. I'll turn it into a blog post and send that out and share it out so that people can access it. And then throughout the season, so let's just use summer as an example, I'm still going to do a general practice where we're getting all the bits and bobs in, but I will also add in extra poses for the sinew channels that are connected to the element of fire, therefore the summer. So I'll add a few things in. So let's just use the past season as an example. So at the time of this recording, we're just still in spring. By the time this comes out, it will be summer. It'll be the first day of summer. But right now, we're still in spring. And the meridians that are connected to spring are the gallbladder and the liver. And so what I have done a workshop on this in the past, and I send that out to my students at the beginning of spring. And then throughout my classes, as we go along throughout spring, I will add a few extra poses for those specific areas. So for the liver, for example, runs up the inner line of the leg. So I will include more shapes that open up the groin and the inner thighs in the spring. Now, I'm also going to do that other times of year because there's actually 3 meridians that run up the inner thighs. But to keep this very simple, I'll do maybe some more dragonflies or more half dragonflies, for example, than I would have in the winter. And then also for the side body, which is where the gallbladder channel runs and the sinew channel of the gallbladder. So I may tend to do more kind of side bends or more than one side bend, or maybe a longer hold in a side bend to get into the sinew channel that's connected to the gallbladder meridian. So this is how I use this information, because sometimes I feel like we can hear all this information and it's interesting and it's fun, but then it's like, what do I do with all this? Now, dear teacher listening to this, if you haven't studied these things in your yin training, or you aren't a Chinese medicine practitioner, or your yin training barely glazed over or just told you that you were doing poses for your meridians, which is not accurate, really. It's a gross oversimplification. Then I wouldn't include this information in your teaching until you've had a chance to actually study it, either with somebody who includes this information in their training, like I do. Then maybe you can do some more seasonally themed classes, or maybe, and this is, you wouldn't be the first, there are plenty of yoga teachers that find yin, fall in love with yin, fall in love with some of this TCM stuff, and then they run off and they go and study more in depth. Whether that study be traditional Chinese medicine, becoming an acupuncturist or a TCMD, or taking medical Qigong, or some sort of shiatsu training. So there are ways to learn more beyond a yin training and study these things if this kind of philosophy and medicine really feels like home to you, which is why I studied Chinese medicine for the first 3 years in college, before I realized that I actually don't want to put needles in people. And so where my studies will take me, or where they were going to take me right before COVID times, and where I hope that they will, is into medical Qigong, because I do absolutely love this medicine and this philosophy and this way of looking at the earth and the elements and the seasons, and then also how we are a part of that. So often as humans, we view ourselves as separate from the earth and the elements, but we are also part of the earth and the elements. We have all of these things inside of us. And this is one of the reasons that I really love TCM thought, is that the organ itself from inside has, of course, a physical, but also a mental, emotional quality to it, and that it is connected to an element and to a season. So it's a very holistic view of a way of looking at us as humans and our connection to the earth. So this is one of the reasons that I fell in love with this medicine and why I studied it for 3 years. And I do include overviews, sort of similar to what you just heard, although more in depth, in my teacher training, so that people have a bit of an understanding, a little bit even, at least, of this kind of philosophy. But if you don't have this philosophy, you haven't studied this, then you probably shouldn't just go Google where the meridians are and start teaching classes telling people that you're doing this practice for the blank blank meridian, because that's an oversimplification and not very accurate. And again, Dr. Karina Smith and I chatted about this a bit more in depth in her interview, which is a fantastic interview. So you could check that out if you want to learn more. So I just thought it would be fun, as the sort of second last episode for the season, before I take a bit of a break, to share a little bit about the summer in TCM and in Taoist thought. So some key takeaways might be to remember that over summertime, it is the most extroverted, the most yang of all of the seasons. And so in order to keep yourself in a state of harmony, we want to balance that out. So we want to balance that out with rest and yin-like things. Yin yoga might be a good choice, although I don't think there's ever a bad time of year for yin yoga, but I might be biased. You want to balance it out with making sure you stay hydrated with your food. And still, I know those of you that are really, really extroverted, that really love summer, you just wait all year for summer. Don't forget that you do still need to take some downtime and some alone time as well. Right? Even the life of the party occasionally should be quiet and still. Okay, I hope you found this interesting. My little seasonal wrap up with summer here. There will be one more episode coming out next week. And then I'm going to take a bit of a pause, and then I will be back with a vengeance and a whole bunch of new episodes. So I hope you found this interesting. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, just take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and then just let me know in the comments what stood out to you. What little nugget that I shared where you're like, oh, that's interesting. Let me know in the comments below. And for those of you that are listening, thank you for listening. And again, if you don't mind taking a moment to offer a review, I would be super grateful. And until we meet again, bye for now.